Happy New Year, everybody, and for our first review of 2023, we're going to look at the movie that we were supposed to look at the end of November of 2022, but it got delayed, as we are now looking at the 8th film in the Godzilla franchise, Son of Godzilla, released in 1967. This one was released 364 days after Ebirah Horror of the Deep, and if you hadn't guessed already, Godzilla gets a son. Well, kinda. It's not really technically his son, but they're the same species, so close enough. As for why they gave him a son, director Jun Fukuda said, "We wanted to take a new approach, so we gave Godzilla a child. We thought it'd be a little strange if we gave Godzilla a daughter, so we gave him a son." And of course there were human characters in this movie as well, because they were required, and actors included Akira Kobu, Taideo Tashima, and Bibari Maeda. The human plot is basically a bunch of scientists are trying to do an experiment to control the weather, but end up screwing it up, and then Godzilla wakes up and comes and meets his son, and they do father and son stuff, and they fight giant praying mantises, and it's the whole thing that happens. So were the humans able to control the weather, I guess, and did Godzilla and his son get along? I guess let's find out as we look at Son of Godzilla, released in 1967. So our film begins on an abandoned island with a team of scientists led by a Professor Kusumi trying to do some sort of weather experiment. They're under the impression that nobody knows they're there, but they're completely wrong as somebody drops down in a parachute. That someone is revealed to be Maki Goro, a freelance reporter looking to cover a story, who will end up being our default main character. The professor decides to let him stay if he agrees to be the cook. Maki then quickly learns how dangerous this island is, as it has giant praying mantises. Look at that. The next day, while Maki is out looking for herbs, he sees a woman swimming in the water, but when he trips on some rocks, she vanishes. He reports this to the professor and others, but they think he's crazy, as there's not supposed to be anybody else on the island. Everyone is pretty on edge, especially Furukawa, as they've been there about a month and haven't accomplished anything yet. The professor explains, though, the importance of their experiment. Basically, in 100 years, due to overpopulation, there's not going to be enough food, so they need to use this experiment to control the weather of places like the tundra and deserts so they can harvest food from those places. Because, you know, the best way to save the planet is by destroying environments. The next day, they're finally ready to launch the experiment, but Maki goes out in search of the girl. They launch 2 balloons. The first one launches successfully, which is supposed to drop the temperature and freeze the island. The second one is a radiation balloon that's supposed to control it, but there's some sort of interference and it explodes too early, which causes a reverse effect, causing the island to overheat to up to 70 degrees Celsius. Jumping ahead to 4 days later, the temperature has finally cooled down a bit to 37 degrees Celsius. The professor and Maki set out to explore the damage done to the island, and they come across the praying mantises again, which are not just large, they're now super ultra mega large. Maki gives them the new name of Kamascaris, and there's 3 of them attacking some sort of rock pile. Eventually they break through the rock pile, which reveals to contain an egg, which they continue attacking. Later that night, Maki notices that somebody has stolen his shirt, and then they all see the girl up in a tree, finally believing him that she exists. Meanwhile, the Kamascaris are still attacking that egg, and it finally breaks, appearing to contain some sort of baby Godzilla. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Furukawa has gone completely insane and is pointing a gun at everybody and tries to escape the island through the water, but you better get out of there, bud, cause here comes that big boy. Godzilla shows up and almost completely destroys their research station, so that sucks. Godzilla goes to war with the Kamascaris and destroys 2 of them, and the third one says, "Yeah, fuck that, I'm out," and flies away. Godzilla doesn't have much parenting skills and accidentally whacks the child in the back of the head and then just walks away expecting it to follow. The woman calls out to the child, however, and gives it a fruit to perk up its spirits before Godzilla comes back and takes it away. The woman returns to her cave to find that Maki has stumbled into there. She reveals her name is Saeko, and she's actually Japanese. No, not just, some random native that just happens to speak Japanese. She's actually Japanese. She's revealed to be there because both her parents were explorers who had her there, but her mother died during childbirth and her father died a few years ago. Maki then introduces her to the rest of the gang, and they decide to hole up in her cave since the research station's pretty much destroyed. Meanwhile, the river's on fire, cause we're in Cleveland, I guess, and baby Godzilla is playing with a rock. The baby Godzilla's name is Manila. I don't think they actually give him that name in this film, but we're just gonna call him that because that's his name, and he proceeds to play jump rope with his dad's tail. Saeko and Maki have bonded real quick as well, as he promises to take her back with them to Tokyo. They also meet up with Manila again, and she gives him another fruit, but then Godzilla shows up and's like, "Hey, what are you doing? You don't talk to humans." And then he throws a hissy fit as Godzilla drags his ass away. Back in the cave, however, there's more problems. Maki, Saeko, Professor Kasumi, and his first-hand man Fujisaka are fine, but everyone else seems to be suffering from heat stroke. Luckily, Saeko knows how to cure this problem by using the warm water of the Red River. Two problems though. One, that river is the river that was on fire where Godzilla is, and two, to get there they have to pass through the Valley of Kumonga, who is a giant spider, although he's currently asleep. Saeko and Maki pass through Kumonga's valley and then end up at the river where Godzilla is trying to teach Manila how to use atomic breath. Manila can't quite produce much of it, but then Godzilla stands on his tail, and he does. How about that? And after Godzilla and Manila go to sleep, they get some of the water and bring it back to the cave. Before they can give it to Furukawa, however, he starts freaking out again and accidentally shoots the professor in the arm, although it only grazes him. The next day everyone's feeling a lot better and Saeko's out getting herbs to treat the professor's wound, but she runs into the final Kamaskuras. The Kamaskuras knocks her out, but then Manila shows up and sees her knocked out and attempts to save her. He still can't produce the necessary atomic breath, however, and falls over, tripping on some rocks, which end up waking up Kumonga. And if you're arachnophobic, as I mentioned before, Kumonga is a giant spider, so the next 3 or so minutes of this review might not be for you. Maki shows up and saves Saeko while Godzilla shows up and again chases off the Kamakura's. Maki and Saeko then run right into Kumonga, however. Kumonga traps them in his webs, but luckily they read in Saeko's dad's book that the webs are deterred by heat. They're able to escape Kumonga by climbing up some rocks, at least for now. Because after they return to the cave, Kumonga finds them and tries to trap them in there using its webs again. Well, everyone's trapped now, so the professor says, screw it, let's continue the experiment, because if we do it successfully, we can freeze the island, which will freeze the monsters. They need to set up their escape by sending out an SOS signal, but the only way to do that is to get it outside. Luckily, there's another way outside, an underwater passage, which is how Saeko escaped before. They go set the antenna and they run into Manila, who's like, hey, let's play, and they're like, nope, can't, and then he just gets all butthurt. Manila's got bigger problems though, as he runs into Kumonga, who starts webbing him up. The humans begin to start the experiment, while the giant Kamaskuras also runs into Kumonga, and also gets webbed up. Kumonga then kills the Kamaskuras and is preparing to kill Manila as well. But then Godzilla shows up and hucks a rock at him, so everything's all good. Except not, because Kumonga's not dead and starts using his webbing on Godzilla. The humans, meanwhile, are preparing to leave as they successfully completed the experiment and the temperature is rapidly dropping. Back at the monster fight, Manila is able to use his atomic breath to stop the webbing, allowing Godzilla to atomic breath Kumonga in the face. And looks like Kumonga's dead, except he's not, as he suckers Godzilla in and blinds him in one eye. The humans then escape on a lifeboat as it begins to snow on the island. And even though it's snowing and even though Godzilla only has one eye, he has the combined power of both him and Manila, and they use their combined atomic breath to kill Kumonga. Problem is now, they're kind of freezing to death and it seems like Godzilla considers abandoning Manila, but he ends up going back for him. Maki on the boat claims, don't worry, they're just gonna hibernate, but I don't know dude, kinda looks like they're freezing to death to me. Our human crew is then saved by an American submarine while Godzilla and Manila totally don't freeze to death to end the film. Well, 8 films in, it's once again time to pull up our Godzilla big board. Well, in order for this to be last, this film would have to be worse than the Bira Horror of the Deep. And was it? I mean, yeah, it was. It was the weakest film out of the 8 so far. I liked the human characters. I think they had a good dynamic, but it's not supposed to be about them, as we've said before. As far as the character of Manila goes, I don't think it was as annoying as a lot of people have made out to be, although to be fair, I hear it gets worse, like a lot worse, which apparently we'll see a couple films from now. But it mostly just acted like a child. I think just the whole concept was silly. I mean, Godzilla doesn't need a son, if you're gonna make Godzilla a babyface, that's fine, but you don't need to add a random son character. I don't think Godzilla, it's just not necessary. It seems like they ran out of ideas and they're like, oh, fuck it, yeah, let's just give Godzilla a son. Why not? So, yeah, I'm gonna put this last. So here's our new rankings. At number 1, Godzilla 1954. Number 2, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Number 3, Godzilla vs. Mothra. Number 4, Invasion of the Astro Monster. Number 5, Godzilla Raids Again. Number 6, King Kong vs. Godzilla. Number 7, Abira Horror of the Deep. And number 8, Son of Godzilla. And the next 2 films in this franchise are very interesting, because the next film, number 9, is Destroy All Monsters, which is considered a very good film in the franchise. The film after that is All Monsters Attack, which is considered by many maybe being the worst film that Toho has made, Godzilla-wise. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to do it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the video description down below. Thank you to all my patrons, also named in the video description, for supporting me and my channels. I appreciate you guys. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taff. This has been my look back at Son of Godzilla, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.